Today I want to talk to you about something that's been on my mind a lot lately, which is always what I talk about. And by the way, I'm a little bit sick, so there might be a little more coughing and kind of pauses in the middle, so bear with me. But the thing I want to talk about is objections, and in particular, the kind of objections you and I hear when we try to sell something. It sounds like a no, but it's not actually a no. And here's what I mean. Say you have, so this usually happens in a conversation because it's harder to get it on a landing page, but say it's a new app that you've built, you want to charge $30 a month for it, and you talk to some people, for example, on Twitter. You're talking to someone and you tell them about your app and you say it's $30 a month, and they tell you, oh no, that's way too expensive. Sounds like a no, right? Sounds like, oh, well, how about $10 a month or $5 a month? And then maybe they subscribe for $5 a month and then they don't use it. Or maybe they say even for $5 a month it's too expensive. I've had this experience so many times that I went as low as I could go with my price on something that I would sell. And then I would go lower. And then I would go even lower. And people would still tell me that this is way too expensive. And it drove me nuts. Like, how can, what, how is it possible? At one point in my entrepreneurship journey, I was selling Wuju, the stress relief app, and four kind of coaching therapy sessions a month. So that's like 4 hours of my work, of the best that I can do. And I was charging $30 a month for it. And people would say, oh no, that's too expensive. What the fuck's going on, right? This is like $7.50 an hour for basically therapy. So what's going on? It's one of the most common objections, so we'll work through that first. But I want to make a general point here that objections and this kind of no, kind of early stage no that you get, is not really a no until you understand what it is about. So let's work through. You know what? Just give me a second here. Like I said, I'm a little bit sick, so this is just part of what's going on today. So let's work through that for a second. So someone tells you that's way too expensive. Now you have an emotional reaction because it's not just that they said it's too expensive, they said the thing you built is too expensive and I don't want it. So the message you're receiving and the message I would receive is like, what I did is not worthwhile enough to pay for, and kind of in brackets, I am not worthy enough to pay for this kind of thing. And in kind of further brackets, there's like a little thing that says, oh, I'm kind of worthless. So when you're emotionally triggered like that from that kind of response, the only thing you can do, your only possible reaction, or actually you have two possible reactions. You know what? Three possible reactions. One reaction is you can say, well, how about half of that price? How about a quarter of that price? Like you're devaluing yourself to the level you think they would agree on. That's the first response. The other response is kind of just emotionally shut down. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Well, bye. Right? It's like just emotionally shut down, retreat from the conversation, and just basically to try to um, run away from it as quickly as possible because of how uncomfortable it is. And remember, the uncomfortable part is not the rejection part. The uncomfortable part is our own feelings about that sense of lack of self-worth or worthlessness or whatever that we're experiencing that we're now fighting, and usually without even recognizing it. So that's the second response, right? Like shutting down. The third response is lashing out. It's like, you motherfucker. So this usually happens internally. Like most people would act, like the most people that I've known and talked to, and myself, I would never actually lash out at a potential customer, but internally there's this like bubbling up of anger, which again we shut down and pretend to not have, and then we try to run away from the conversation. But it's not because we it's not because we want to run and hide, it's because we want to lash out. So it's basically like the fight or flight or freeze kind of response, the same three reactions, because we're like deer in headlights. We're caught unaware, unprepared for this eventuality that we'll tell someone, oh, this is what it costs, and they say that's too expensive. And then there's another thing that happens. This moment, this instance, when you get that response, also creates a little bit of trauma in you. Like for some people, it's a little bit of trauma. For others, it's a lot of trauma. But it is much harder to get on a call with the next client and offer them something that you're selling after the previous one told you no and you had that emotional response. Now, the most common advice by salespeople and sales trainers everywhere the world over about this, like everyone knows this is what it's like, right? It's like this is the fundamental experience of selling anything to anybody, is hearing people say no. So the basic standard reaction of sales trainers and salespeople to that is like, well, you need to do a lot of this. You basically need to desensitize yourself to this experience so you don't have that reaction. So that's like I mentioned fight or flight or freeze response, right? Like the usual thing it relates to is meeting a bear in the woods or a tiger in the jungle, right? You have that kind of response. So if we equate the sales advice to how you should deal with tigers and jaguars and bears, is that, well, you just have to put yourself in that situation many 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 times, and then by the whatever 50th or 100th time, it won't bother you as much. Possibly. But again, we have the trauma thing, and also that the bear might eat you if you do this too many times and you don't change your approach. And what I propose is something else. We need to arm ourselves. We need to prepare. We need to train and prepare ourselves for that eventuality, because it is unavoidable. Unavoidable, sorry. You will always encounter resistance and objection when you try to sell. Yeah, I know it's uncomfortable. I know. It's like I'm an engineer. You guys probably watching me are probably engineers. Not most people who watch these things are engineers. And if you're anything like me, then conflicts is not something you are too happy about entering, especially verbal conflicts, right? So like, oh, can we somehow do it without this? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people don't want to sell and don't want to ask for money and don't want to present something that they've built and say, well, this is the thing that I've built, give me money for it. It's just difficult to hear that response. So we need to train and we need to arm ourselves. And the thing that we need to arm ourselves with is, wait for it, is simple human curiosity. So this is how this works. You don't Stop when people tell you no. So you say, I built this app, it cost $30, and you've had a conversation, and you kind of know that the person on the other end actually needs the thing you've built, and they tell you, oh no, that's way too expensive. And you already know what the next thing you're going to say is going to be. You've prepared, you've watched this video, you kind of practiced it in your own mind. And you say, oh, really? Why do you say that? And then you have a conversation, like a meta conversation, about what too expensive means. So why is kind of the entry point to that. But what you're actually looking for is like things that are somewhat uncomfortable to talk about, but what are they comparing it to? How much money are they making? Really uncomfortable question to ask. But sometimes people will tell you, sometimes people will not tell you. What are the other expenses they have in the same area? So for example, you're selling a $30 a month app and they have a business, or maybe they're freelancing or something. Is like, how much money are they spending on other things, on other apps for their service? For their business. How much money are they spending on human-based services on this? How much do they charge per hour? How does this relate to that? So here's the thing: $30 might be a lot for an app that does a single thing. Might seem like a lot compared to the whatever $12 or $16 Netflix charges that gives you a full range of all the videos in the world, and it might be a lot compared to I don't know, even their like cell phone bill, or like similar to their cell phone bill. But it's also like 5 or 6 cups of coffee, and maybe they get 20 of those because they buy a coffee every day, right? It really depends on what they compare it to. It also might be, if they charge $100 for an hour of their work, and your app saves an hour of their work in a month, then those $30 that they paid they've actually made $70 on that transaction. So again, it really, really, really depends on what they compare it to and how they think about it. And the default way they think about it might not be optimal for you. They might not be comparing it to the right thing. And it's not like you may think, oh, well, if I reframe their thinking and get them to compare it to something else, then I'm manipulating them. It's not manipulation. When you decided on how much to charge, you took these things into account as well. You're not like you didn't pull the number off the wall and just like put it out there. You presumably thought a little bit before you decided on how much to charge for your service, and you related it to the kind of value you believe you're providing. So you have intuition about what this is worth and what this is good for, and why this is the price. But they might not, right? And they would not if you don't have the conversation. Now, when you dig into it and you ask all these questions about how they think about money, how they think about cost, how they think about expenses, earnings, all these things, sometimes you need to preface that with saying, listen, this is totally fine, like not a problem at all. I just want to ask you a couple of questions because I want to learn more about my business. I want to understand what's going on here with the pricing because I've heard this response a few times before, and I want to understand what's going on. That should disarm them a little bit and allow you to ask these questions. And you may not be able to make a sale under those circumstances. So this is a really important point. You are not asking these questions about how much they make and how they think about the cost in order to manipulate that specific person into buying your app for the price you're asking. No, you're doing that because you need to find out what's going on. Because even if that conversation ends with you not making a sale, you will get something potentially even more valuable, deeper understanding about how people think about your business. Because a sales interaction is fundamentally a conflict. You can say it's even an emotional conflict. You want to sell something, they don't want to buy it. But by setting that aside, listen, I understand this is not the right thing for you, but I do want to ask you a few questions. When you put it in that framing, suddenly you become co-explorers of this topic and can talk freely about this question of pricing and what is it worth for them, and you learn a lot. So you do one conversation like that, you do two conversations like that, you do three conversations like that. By the fourth, you already know everything people have to say about the pricing of your app. So either you've adjusted the pricing, by the way, it could be higher, not just lower. Either you've adjusted the pricing or you understand the way they think about it, or you understand the value you need to provide for them to see the value in the app, maybe, app and a little bit of service or some kind of personal experience. And then your fourth sale has a much higher chance of succeeding. And as I always say, if you watched any of my other videos, any kind of large scale marketing starts with these individual sales, because your landing page needs to reflect these objections, and your if you use like paid ads or SEO or anything, like you need to work through these things. You need to talk about these things. You need to talk about the right kind of value, and you need to talk about the right kind of comparison. So here are two specific things that I did, that I consult on marketing. And I've been hearing that a lot as well. I talk to indie hackers, solopreneurs, software developers who built something, and I'm like, okay, you don't have users. Let me help you find users, and here's how much it costs. And almost every one of those people would, or like you, would tell me, listen, my business is not making any money right now. Therefore, I cannot pay you to help me turn my business into something that makes money. And it drove me nuts, because there's a catch-22 here. I chose as my specialty, or I don't know, the universe chose me for this, to help people with the very early stages of their business when they're not making money. So when someone tells me, listen, I'm not making any money in my business, I can't pay you, I was like, how is this possible? Like, you will pay me in order for me to help you to make money out of your business. Of course, you're not making any money out of your business. This is what I'm here for. And on a conversation, I think it was last week, or maybe the week before, suddenly it occurred to me that the clients that I did have and that I do have never paid me out of their business revenue ever, because they never have any. They always paid me out of their savings. So I told this guy, actually, like, because this is what I do, I help people start the business. People never pay me out of their earnings. They always pay me out of their savings. And that little reframe, that little phrase, they pay me, most people pay me out of their savings, changed the dynamic completely. Now, instead of this guy thinking, well, I have zero monthly income, and therefore I can spend $0 on coaching or consulting, he now thought, well, I have this and this amount of expenses, this and this amount of savings. Can I afford a few $1,000s to pay a guy to help me figure out how to make this business generate revenue? And it's a completely different calculus, right? So that reframe was important. It did not take me 3 sales calls to figure this out. So, maybe I'm exaggerating that you'll notice it after three calls. But hopefully now, using kind of my experience because I needed to figure this out on my own, possibly using this explanation my experience, you would be able to do it much quicker. So that's one reframe. The other reframe that you might find useful is that, again, this is my world. Maybe your world is different, but it's an example of how this looks. If someone from my world, if someone has 12 months of runway, like a 12 enough money to live for 12 months. Let's say they have like $5,000 expenses per month, and we're not talking business expenses, just like life expenses. And they have $60,000 in their bank account that will allow them to live without dying of hunger for 12 months. And let's say that I charge $5,000. Now, $5,000 for a person with just $60,000 and no income is a ridiculously large amount of money, right? It's like it's a lot of money. I'm no question about that. I'm asking for a lot, but if we look at it as not $5,000 but a month of their runway, right? Because $5,000 is a month of their runway. So that means that if they pay me for my service instead of 12 months of runway, they now have 11 months of runway. So the only thing that I need to deliver with my service is to speed them up by just 1 month, to save them 1 month of stumbling around. Now, this is a really, really, really low bar, because stumbling around is what we do as entrepreneurs. And the fact that I have some experience, maybe not all possible experience, but some experience around what things you should do and what things you shouldn't do, and kind of speed it up, even by just by simple accountability, just by talking to me every week or every few days, speeding things up by a month is so easy. I'm actually pretty sure I can speed things up by like a factor of 4 or 5. But speeding things up by a month is really easy. And then that conversation becomes like about that. Can I speed? It becomes about speed. It becomes about runway. It stops being about the dollars. And that's a very useful reframe for me. And it is a very useful reframe for them as well, because even if the person I'm talking to would decide that I'm not the right person for them, which is perfectly fine, like I'm not the right person for everybody, they would now be in a state of mind that some of their runway does not have to go to groceries or beer or whatever. It could go to things that will expedite their or shorten their time to success of their business, which means possibly training, tools, help, even hiring someone, like whatever that would make it faster. Yeah, because if they chop off a few months of their runway but put it into something that makes it faster by a factor of 3 or 4, then it's worth it. It's just a risk calculation. Anyway, that's just an example from my world, from my own practice, about how this works. There are always reframes like that. I'm going to end this recording right now, and I'm going to close it off because this is this is a good topic, and it's enough for now. It's also half an hour, and a half-hour recording is excellent. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.